to aspirational mobility. The data indicates that female-driven educational migration outpaced male growth rates between 2001 and 2011, suggesting that for women, the core objective often involves escaping the societal control and acquiring human capital for global ambitions. The invisible surge is grounded in 2011 census data, which records over 3.5 million individuals migrating within India for educational purposes. This surge is best understood through a model of migration transition by Jelinski, which posits that as societies industrialize, youth are drawn to urban education cities with robust labor markets and higher institutions. For women specifically, this mobility functions as a critical escape from restrictive domestic rules. The growth rate of women migrating for education and work has now surpassed that of men, highlighting a major demographic transformation that challenges traditional patriarchal stay-at-home norms. A nuanced analysis of this migration requires a modified push and pull model that accounts for intervening obstacles unique to female experience. While traditional push factors include a lack of local platform and poverty cycles in states like Uttar Pradesh, the pull factors of edu cities like Maharashtra and Karnataka offer independence and self-actualization. However, the journey is not seamless. It is filtered through obstacles such as patriarchal norms, safety concerns regarding independent living, and intersecting regional or cultural prejudice. These barriers act as filters that dictate who can migrate and what they must endure to remain in their host cities. The transition from one's home to an education city often results in the dissonance of arrival, where the promise of academic freedom meets the harsh-lived reality of relocation. Students move with expectations of unrestricted access to professional opportunities and an escape from the gendered roles, hoping for seamless integration into modern cosmopolitan spaces. Instead, they often face an immediate onset of loneliness, homesickness, and cultural disintegration, compounded by language barriers and regional stigma. As a researcher, Hart suggests the learner's experience is heavily dictated by their psychological state and the institutional constraints they encounter upon arrival to a new location. The lived experience of female student migrants is not monolithic. It is a trajectory shaped by 4 distinct overlapping structural barriers described here as architectures of friction. These pillars, namely gender, culture, regional identity, and language, interact to create a unique set of challenges in host cities. Gender encompasses the patriarchal realities of academic and urban safety, while the culture involves value system dissonance, and regional identity highlights the privilege gap and policing of one's geographical roots, and language acts as a daily text of self-censorship. Together, these 4 forces dictate the ease or difficulty, which we can term as exposures and discrimination, with which a student navigates her new environment. The first pillar examines how academia and urban infrastructure remain profoundly patriarchal, treating female ambitions as an anomaly. Analytical testimonies show that mainstream migration theories for men cannot be applied to women because they later must navigate different spatial boundaries based on safety. So here are some of the testimonies of the fieldwork I have done for this particular research. So you can go through it as well as I am also going through it. Okay. So students like Sabha in Aligarh, which is a city in Uttar Pradesh, describe feeling conscious and afraid of being judged while performing simple tasks like grocery shopping. Like while doing the grocery, they in a male-dominated market, the female students, as Sabha has highlighted, they feel conscious by being judged by the people around there. Similarly, a researcher like Stuti highlights institutional bias where professor may prefer the male scholars for research positions. So these experiences illustrate that the academic space itself often enforces gendered hierarchies. The second pillar is cultural bereavement and acculturation. So it refers to the sudden loss of familiar attitudes, values, and social networks that occur during relocation. So basically, this can be in simply terms can be defined as the homesickness. When you migrate to a new place, the culture or the people there are different from your location. So you feel homesickness and cultural restriction there. This isolation curve illustrates this process as students begin at a point of relocation, falls into a deep thorough of dissonance and must slowly work towards adaptation. Field notes from students like Prachi and Yumna highlight this struggle. They describe a constant lack in understanding city culture and encouraging stigma regarding their hometowns. This is a necessary psychological hurdle that institutions often fail to recognize or support. So basically, as we are aware in India, the people of particular states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar are often judged either on the basis of their language or either on the basis of the development their its states are having. So these respondents highlighted how they were judged because of their hometown, of their place of location in a new place. The third one is the regional privilege gap. Moving to an education city forces up confrontation with regional identity, where a student's educational background, once a source of local pride, is suddenly viewed as a deficit. This metropolitan privilege creates a hierarchy that marginalizes students from minimalist origins or small cities. The testimonies from students like Ananya and Navashri, which you can also go through, reveal that they were often looked down upon or made to feel insecure or inferior because their previous resources were not at par with their urban peers. For students from regions like the Northeast, this gap is further viewed by a constant thrust of an entirely different culture towards them, and this leads to the doubt on their identity. The fifth is the tax of linguistic assimilation. Language barriers extend beyond mere comprehension. They enforce a daily tax of self-censorship and assimilation. The identity shift spectrum shows students moving from their regional dialects, like the Biharis use the term hum instead of using main, to avoid mockery or exploitation. Her account of using math to avoid being a victim of mockery, and another respondent's experience, Lilith's experience of professors teaching solely in Hindi, demonstrate how linguistic dominance can structurally impede academic potential and social integration. For many, the abutment of their linguistic roots is a survival mechanism to evade being duped by the locals. So it happens like when you don't know the language of the place you have migrated to, so the locals often charge you more monies, be it the taxi workers or the grocery shoppers. So the people from the northeast or another states have been the victims of being duped by the locals. The core concept of standpoint epistemology argues that female migrant students do not experience these barriers in isolation. Rather, the overlapping identities produce compounded vulnerabilities. For example, a student from Patna moving to Delhi faces the friction of Bihari regional stigma multiplied by the patriarchal safety concerns. Similarly, a student from Manipur faces linguistic dominance compounded by historic violence and cultural erasure. The analytical conclusion is clear. There is no single migrate women experiences, and any institutional support must be intersectional to be effective. Institutions frequently fail female migrants because they view migration purely as an administrative transfer, ignoring the psychological and structural violence of relocation. So there have been incidents where the institution does not care about the psychological impact or the structural violence the female migrants face due to the relocation. Like there have been incidents where the warden of the hostel were not polite enough for the students of the first year who have migrated just now after doing their school learning. Where intersectionality ignored, empathy vanishes. This slide maps these blind spots across the hostel, the classroom, and the street. In hostels, wardens often lack essential compassion, while in classroom, professors may alienate linguistic minorities. On the street, a lack of cooperation with outsiders forces students to brace themselves for an unknown and often hostile environment. Lastly, the presentation concludes by asserting that true accessibility requires dismantling these architectures of friction. As long as female students must expend vital energy navigating patriarchal academics, linguistic erasure, and cultural dislocation, educational equity remains out of reach. Referring to the Article 13 of the 1966 UN International Covenant, this research argues that higher education must be made equally accessible to all. Policy cannot rely on male-dominated models. It must be actively redesigned from the standpoint of marginalized female students to foster a truly inclusive academic landscape. In conclusion, we must recognize that true educational accessibility is not merely about an administrative transfer or a hostel allotment. As we have seen through the lens of standpoint epistemology, the energy a female student spends navigating linguistic erasures, patriarchal safety concerns, and cultural dislocation is energy stolen from her academic potential. Policy cannot continue to rely on mainstream model that ignores these architectures of friction. If we are to honor the spirit of Article 13, we must actively redesign our academics from the standpoint of the marginalized female student. Only then can the journey towards education be a path towards true self-actualization rather than a series of structural hurdles. And this was from my side.
Yeah. So thank you so much because in the last few lines got freezed for me. But apart from that, I think it was an excellent presentation, bringing out all the important, as you have rightfully mentioned, about the compounded vulnerabilities that migrant workers, especially female student migrants, were experiencing. And thank you so much for taking up this topic as a part of your research and as a part of your activism. Yeah, Unnati is also writing that, yeah, that was quite insightful. And the last part just froze for me during the meeting. So maybe there is a network issue that happened. It's not like nothing serious, so don't worry, all good. And yeah, I would like to open the floor now. Yeah, please. Do you want to say something?
They say the same. If anyone wants to give some suggestion or question,
Yeah.
can give me.
Yeah, I was just about to say that if anybody has any questions for Nalini's insightful work, the floor is all yours. Please address it either in the chat, or you can just directly open your like unmute yourself and then ask her the questions that you have. Please feel free to ask any questions. There are no right and wrong questions. So yeah, it's gonna be interactive and we can learn from each other. So please, if you have any questions, please carry on. Otherwise, I have questions which I will ask a bit later, but I would like to give the floor to others first. Okay. Anybody wants to go first? Please, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself, or you can write your question in the chat. For now, I cannot see any question in the chat, but if you want to, please. Not yet. Okay, then I think I would go first because because there are no questions so far. Okay, first of all, I was extremely okay. There is a question, not a like a request, rather. Like, first of all, thank you, ma'am. It's really a nice presentation from an anonymous person with Samsung phone. Ma'am, can you share your presentation slides for take some snap for information? Would you be willing to share your presentation slide link in a link format in the chat? Maybe it would be helpful for others to have a look. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I will share it. I will.
Okay.
And thank you, Samsung.
On that note, first, it's very insightful to hear what you did as a part of your research, and also very interactive slides to follow. Like the way you made the slides, it's really incredible. To have a visual representation of your research, it's really completely comprehensive, and kudos to you on that part. That's not a suggestion, it's like a more like a applause for your hard work. Yes. I really like your topic that you chose as a part of your research, because I think feminization of migration is not really coming up in general, especially with the lens of compounded vulnerabilities, especially we tend to ignore when it comes to vulnerabilities that female migrant students especially experience. So thank you for that. And you brought up so many important aspects such as homesickness, language of being judged, racial judgments based on spatial locations, and victims of local exploitation so far, and psychological impacts such as institutional violations and violence that has been reproduced by institutions because they are getting deprived of their situations of vulnerabilities are not getting acknowledged even by their own institutions in the education premise, which is quite sad. And I would like to know about your research area and research methodology, which you have used, because these data are quite sensitive to gain about, like how did you proceed with that. It would be really interesting to get to know about this first, and then I have more questions, definitely.
Thank you firstly so much for the compliment and the question. So basically, my research for this was limited to two universities, Aligarh Muslim University and Delhi University. So I am an alumni of both the universities and currently doing my research at Aligarh Muslim University. So I was quite comfortable here at gaining the data. So my research was qualitative. The method was qualitative, and I used the snowball sampling for it because not everyone was willing to give their data, because like they were being quite reluctant because they thought it must go to the head of the institutions, or like especially the first year students, they were quite reluctant for it. So I used the snowball sampling for it so that some of my friends and known ones who are there in these universities, so I, through their batchmates and through their hostel mates, I gather these data.
It is
And
really
also,
great that you could manage so much data and forward teams also in your research, because I think the qualitative research in terms of gaining migrant voices are really important. And so far, because you have involved so many compounded vulnerabilities together, I was very curious to know that how you developed your methodology and how you get access to the field, basically, like as you chose two university. One is like you're a part of both the universities, but still, as you mentioned, that because it has institutional vulnerabilities also involved, sometimes it gets more sensitive because people probably are not that willing to share their own insights about certain topics. So methodology was one of my how to say interest zones when it comes to migration research, because people are generally a little bit holding up themselves to before sharing. And yeah, also there is like you brought in the aspect of homesickness, racial judgments, and victims of local exploitation and all this. In terms of like, I am personally doing research at the moment on emotions and migration, but from the perspective of climate affected migrant workers, mostly male and also women. But in terms of like feminization of migration, in the first slide I remember you started with the escalating feminization of the migration graph, but then later you started the discussion with the push and pull models, like how the migration drivers or decisions rather are reshaped and renegotiated with the aspirations and the capacities, which are kind of interconnected or intersected with diverse gender, culture, political, socioeconomic positions, all these sort of things. How would you see it? Like, how is your observation? Like, what is really driving student mobility? Like, from your response set, like from the sampling methods, they have all migrated probably from a smaller place or maybe an urban space to this Aligarh Muslim University, to Delhi University. How are their experiences? Like, what really, particularly, what factor really drove their migration pattern, or what actually kind of hold them back? What are the negotiations that they experience in their personal journeys? If you would like to shed some light on that.
yeah, the obviously the majority of the chunk was from the small town or rural area coming to Delhi or Aligarh as well. Like, so, okay, so basically the main push factor for them was to get the exposure. It was, education was the second priority, but to get the exposure was the main push factor for them to come and to know things and to explore things as well. Like the education in their particular area was not so significant, not of quality. So that was the thing, to get the exposure in education. They was the pull factor, sorry, push factor for them. Now, coming to the pull factor, there were a series of pull factors. Like, firstly, was the safety concerns. The parents, as coming from the small town area or the rural area, parents are not, or the family members are not aware of many things, and the patriarchal thought, like, why should female should get the education, like 8th is enough or 10th or 12th is enough, or even they have the perspective that they can get their graduation done from their area only, क्योंकि सिर्फ as we say कि सिर्फ पढ़ना ही तो है, डिग्री ही तो लेनी है, kind of a thing. So that was the pull factor. Safety issue was also the reason, because of the news we get, like with how Delhi is insecure, unsafe for the females. So the news and the TV shows like the Crime Patrol, so they were quite affected and influenced by these incidences. So they were quite reluctant to send their daughters there. Not only the safety issue, but also the what do we say, the reason, like maybe they will get influenced by some bad energy or etc, like their respect would be like demeaned, etc, etc. So these were the pull factors which fortunately my respondents were able to negotiate and come to gain their education.
Thank you so much for sharing this detailed insights, because I personally feel that this kind of negotiations are not just restricted. Like, of course, it is more like the degrees are more when it is happening in terms of like the student mobility or any forms of mobility when it involves women from small town to like bigger towns, as well as I completely agree with to get the exposure, because the exposure is not here just higher education exposure, because probably they are lacking that sort of awareness or human capital in their own small towns, and some of them have the capacities or aspirations to gain it in terms of education. Some of them just want to explore a bigger city in their life, maybe the improvement in the living circumstances, maybe opportunities, maybe in terms of different things. And safety concerns always when it comes to India. I think any metropolitan city, it is a issue for women. We all know how harsh it is and how harsh each and everyday mobility gets negotiated when it comes to not just traveling from one point A to point B, but also like our daily routine mobilities are also gets negotiated. And yeah, I think your respondents are really courageous to think that think beyond this kind of stereotypical viewpoints, like why women should get education, and kind of renegotiated this kind of aspects in their specialities, and fought with this reluctance. So very, very impressive, and it's very important as well. We have one question from our team members. It's from Archana. She asks that how do you conceptualize the paradox between educational migration as a pathway to empowerment and as a process that may simultaneously reproduce gendered and institutional vulnerabilities? In your findings, does mobility truly disrupt patriarchal structures, or does it merely relocate them into new institutional settings?
Thank you, Archana, for this wonderful question. So basically, let me read it again. Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit long.
Okay, yeah. So this is the thing, that there have been the the findings or the responses which I gathered were not truly giving the empowerment to these student migrants. There were also the gendered and institutional vulnerabilities, which I have also discussed in my slides as well. Like, the empowerment was, the first empowerment for them was to come to a new place, while negotiating the patriarchal or misogynistic belief system at their home location, hometown, or within their family. So that was the first empowerment I think they got before migrating only. Secondly, while coming to a new location, they get the exposures of learning new things, be it the technological ones or be it negotiating the marketplaces as well. Like women coming from the rural places were not quite habitual of going to the markets either late night or even during the daytime as well, because they have their brothers, they used to go there. Secondly, also they were also got to learn a lot of new learnings as well in terms of how to dismantle patriarchy as well, and the exposures they get during their educational learning times, like in terms of attending new conferences or seminars or the new theories which they were not aware of. And there were obviously gender and institutional vulnerabilities in terms of the first is the hostel timings. Like still, even they have come to get the exposures, but the exposure is limited to a particular time. Like the boys' hostel timing is till the late night, but they like in AIM it is around 6 to 7, and in DU also it was around 7 to 8 p.m. Not only the institutional hostels, but also the private hostels which are there in Delhi. They also have the limited time for to go out for the female migrating students. Also, like I said, the second question of Archana, like I said, the mobility has disrupted the patriarchal structures as they move to a new locations. But also, like some of the respondents told me that the things they were not able to do at the hometown, or they were quite were little bit feared about doing them, they were able to do here because of the assistance they got from their classmates or the roommates, hostel mates. So these were both of the things, the empowerment, also the vulnerabilities they have to face coming there.
Thank you so much. We have another question from Jagboshani, who says that firstly it's a very great presentation. Thank you so much. Sorry she can't open her camera due to network issues. And she has a similar question. Could you tell us how your research reveals subtle forms of hidden institutional curriculum that regulate female migrants' behavior, belonging, or academic participation, such as hostel rules, as you were mentioning, surveillance, model policing, or linguistic expectations?
Thank you, Jadisni, for your compliment and the question as well. Okay, see, the hostel rules I have already discussed, and about the surveillance or moral policing. If we talk about, yes, there are a lot of surveillance and moral policing regarding the uh, female students, the hostelers coming out late at night. Like they have to uh, give their attendance after their dinner. In some institutions there are this thing of giving attendance after doing the dinner or after coming back, and also they have to put the application or get the approval from their guardians, be it the parents or the people living in that city. So they have to go through this procedure as well, which is not done by the male students living in hostels. So this is the distinction, the surveillance which the female students have to go through, and due to which we also have so many like and the major movement called the Pinjara tour, which was all about science and moral policing. And regarding the linguistic expectations, as one of my exponents in this slides we have discussed, was not able to adapt in a classroom learning because teachers, she was from the northeast, and the teachers were, some of the teachers were used to teach in Hindi only, which was difficult for her to learn things. Also, while gathering other data, one of my respondents told she was from the south and she came to a north university where one of the professor, like assistant professor who was doing the academics things, administrative things, told her, how would you manage the things here? Like your language is so different from the north. So like how these expectations demean their moral and the empowerment thing.
Thank you, Nalini. We have another question from one of our team member, Maharna. Yeah, that question is thanks to you. And would you I'm going back to Maharnab's question now. Would you argue that educational migration should be understood not only as geographical mobility but also as social and epistemic mobility? In your view, do female student migrants gain equal access to knowledge production and intellectual authority within academia?
Yeah, I definitely think that the education migration should not be understood in terms of geographical mobility, which was the first thing I told while starting this presentation, and which is the base of my research as well. Like with it only, my research has started. It should be about the lived experiences, social and epistemic knowledge as well. So my research is, and my belief is that we should not understand educational migration with the patriarchal and patriarchal knowledge system, which put the male at the center of their knowledge production. So I really think they should move beyond the geographical mobility. Now coming to the second one. Okay, so like female students get the equal access to knowledge production, but within the classroom pedagogy only, because their teachers have to teach same to all their students. But when coming to the exposure which they think they will get moving to a new location or to a particular such an prestige institutions, like when like male students are lucky enough to get exposure even when their institution is closed or their hostel timing is sorry, even with when their hostel timing has ended, like the female students have to go through a lot of administrative procedure, like the application or telling the authorities how they need to attend some conferences or some seminars. So in that way their exposure is limited in terms of gaining language, apart from the pedagogy they get from within their classrooms. Like when it's when like in Delhi, there's not a limit of conferences and seminars, and they can be done in the daytime as well and in the nighttime as well. But these women students have to face and encounter these difficulties to access these conferences. So I think in that way the knowledge production has been limited to them.
Thank you so much, Nalini, for beautifully explaining and answering to all the questions that we have in the chat at the moment. And it is a matter of like inequality that we are dealing with in terms of women's access to knowledge production and women's access to higher education system, even like the gender stereotypes are so vivid in our everyday lives. Not like it is more, the degrees are much more when people when women, especially girls, are from belonging from smaller towns trying to pursue higher education. And most importantly, the feminization of migration is mostly looked upon from a marriage migration perspective, mostly. But when it comes to student mobility, that is very, very rarely discussed. Their belonging, their struggle, and their everyday lived experiences, as you were also mentioning to Maharnav's question, that it is beyond geographical mobility. It is much, much more towards social mobility. And that's how I think it could be connected to some forms of empowerment, because they are fighting back and resisting all these patriarchal norms and challenges. But on the contrary, the systematic, like this migration nexus is kind of a negotiation between structure and agency, just how all the other social realities are. And this classroom pedagogy are not allowing them to gain the actual forms of empowerment, because either they are facing bureaucratic hassles to explore and get access to higher education, as you were mentioning, they are facing adaptability issues in terms of language, and also has to go through institutional racist remarks in terms of getting in. So kudos to you for bringing up this important and very, very critical aspect of feminized student mobility perspectives. And that is happening in a metro city. So it's a shame, but also it has to be like critically brought in. And yeah, we have I have to share that we have like the speaker interest, a speaker, like if you want to be a speaker like Nalini in our academic discussion series, then feel free. Maharnav has already posted the link in the chat, and you would also receive a certificate of attendance after this. So Maharnav, would you please share this on the chat as well, so that everybody can fill the form? And request you, if you also like to share your presentation link in the chat, so that others who are interested can also get access to the presentation slide. And yeah, if anybody has any further question, I see Jagashini has raised her hand, so please.
Hi, Punya, thank you so much. And Nalini, thank you so much for the presentation. I was facing some network issues, that's why I kind of posted my. Am I audible clearly? Like, my voice is clear, right? It is not. Yeah, it's clear. Okay. So, my second question, rather, it's kind of something that I wanted to share in this context, is basically when I was doing my master's in JNU. So, a friend of mine, she's from Arunachal Pradesh. So, she said something to me that, because she's from the Northeast, so there are like, I was pursuing my master's in sociology, right? So, we did not have any core course particularly dedicated to these areas, okay, regions. Not even, the readings that we used to get from the professors. So to pursue that, and because we had the option to basically take any course from other departments as well, so there were certain specific centers dedicated to, Northeast, or dedicated to certain, maybe Dalit studies, or, these things. But for the, the mainstream subjects like maybe sociology, history, and all of those subjects, the reading, the syllabus was not such, or the course, all of those things are not, were not framed in a manner which included these, underrepresented population. So she said that, I don't think that we belong to the so-called mainstream academic, the setup. Okay, so it feels like, if we want to know about ourselves, I have to go to a different center, a specialized center, where people like me only are there. So basically, nobody else, like from other parts of India, mostly like they don't take these courses, right? So it's just that, the course is basically limited to, the population from the Northeast only. So that is the thing. So have you also encountered certain things, maybe your the respondents, have they shared any such, the experience like this with you? So I would like to know more.
Thank you, yes, Agni, for telling your experience, your friend's experience. So, no, I was not able to encounter such experience, but maybe I was not looking in that way also. I have never asked these my respondent these questions as well in terms of how they feel when their population is not integrated in the knowledge production and knowledge system, but definitely from now I think I will integrate this portion while doing my research as well. But until now I was not able to encounter it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jagboshani, for your question, and thank you so much, Nalini, for
Yes, I
answering.
think there is another question in the chat. Unnati Singh wants to ask.
Yeah, I'm
question.
going to that now. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to ask a question next if time permits. Yes. Please go ahead. Either you unmute yourself or you can write your question in chat.
Hi, good evening. So, thank you so much for the presentation. And my question is a little personal because I'm also an independent researcher. So, I would like to know when we talk about migration studies, we often talk about the researcher's positionability as a woman. And when you were collecting the data, did you have to develop a specific mode of care towards these women that you were collecting data from to ensure that you weren't just extracting, stories or just finding this point of, gain instead of just, I think migration studies often also touches upon empathy and, a lot of emotions. So these, the transition from leaving your home to finding a space can be traumatic and can be stressful and uh, can become catastrophic as well. So, did you feel like, as a researcher and a woman, did you struggle to see, or did you find it overbearing when you were, collecting the data as a woman? Because articulation in these spaces can become difficult.
Thank you, Nandu, for such a beautiful question. Okay, so the thing is, the the idea of doing research on this came from myself only, because I was also a migrant woman when I did my graduation in Delhi University. So I migrated from Aligarh to Delhi. So that was the point where I firstly felt the homesickness, making friends, and culturally adapting to the life there in terms of academics as well, and in terms of exposure wise as well. So I think this made my research very much close to me, and due to this I was able to kind of make connection to the respondents I gathered my data and the places as well, because uh, from the learning I got the learning that I have to go in the field. I do not need to be fear of anything. And firstly, as a migrant, you need to make a connection with the other the migrants one. So I think this was the point which made my research, or talking to the respondents at ease, and there was no difficulty for me. Like maybe I was for this, I have experienced this in my graduation days. Yeah.
Thank you. Also, did you feel, I mean, as a Hindi-speaking person myself who lives in Telangana, when I discuss things, I often, spur out things in Hindi when I'm asking questions. Did you find yourself also, like translating things twice or like uh, asking questions in Hindi to sort of, connect to the people? Because you also mentioned about gender, culture, and language becoming like an obstacle for migrating students. But since you were talking about, your audience was in Aligarh University and Delhi, did you find it difficult to talk to people who are non-Hindi speakers as a researcher?
Yeah, it was difficult. Matlab, it was quite difficult. Yeah, it was, because like I also get to Kerala. So with them, it was when you gather the data, you don't need to be professional. Otherwise, it would be just the sharing of the data. It would not be the personal touch. With will not be discussed with someone whom they are comfortable with them. क्योंकि मैं भी उनके लिए I am also a stranger to them. But जब तक वो comfortable नहीं आएगी, जब तक मैं एकदम professional बनना नहीं करूँगी, I think वो वो चीज होगी. तो it's okay अगर आप if you are using your mother tongue also while gathering data. I think and I enjoyed it. It was not overwhelming for me because like they were also happy to share. Happy. Was I audible?
I think for a
Some,
second,
yeah,
just glitched.
a little bit it got frozen in between, but yeah.
Okay. So should I repeat it or you got the idea?
No, I do get the gist. Thank you so much. It was quite an insightful talk. Seriously, this was so good. And the speaker as well. Thanks for the wonderful questions. I think she started it off with her questions and it sort of pushed me to ask questions as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We have another question from Shakti. Nalini, is there any formal or informal subsystem which you explored within universities or female to cope with hurdles of migration?
I don't know, like formally I was able to do it, but maybe the respondents from my current universities, if they had any problem, I was able to tell them you can do this way or this way, but not formally. I have not touched on this thing. But that was a good question. I think I need to work on this as well because I should also bring my research in practical way also. Yeah.
Here, do we have any further questions or comments? If not, then I have a question. Okay. Go ahead.
My question was different. Like, is there any system to support migrant female students? Like, I'm not asking you to establish a system. I'm just asking, is there any established system already present in universities?
Okay, got it. Okay, I don't think so. There is any such system because I have not came across through it through my readings as well and through my respondents as well. I have asked them this question if they have any support system when like when the difficulties they face during the migration or coping up. There is no formal system, but but basically the informal system is there through their friends or through their batchmates. Only informal वाला वही चीज है but not the formal thing. Not the formal one is there.
Thank you so much, Shakti, for your question, and thank you so much to Nalini for answering. Yeah. Okay. So yes, right. Thank you so much, Nalini. Yeah. All right. Then, are you tired of answering to questions?
No. I'm feeling lucky to answer and get this question. Also the suggestions like the people are giving me through asking these questions. So I'm very grateful.
I am very happy that you chose your own positionality as a graduate student, being a female student migrant person and taking up this research, because I can totally relate to you being an international female student migrant at the moment. So yeah. And it totally transcends beyond boundaries, I think, whatever you have explained so far. And I have also experienced similar instances from different cross-border women and migrant students, especially from India as well as outside India. So I can totally relate to it in terms of relatability. You have mentioned a very important point about social capital in your presentation. Like you need to have certain forms of connections in order to gain data as well as I think these small students, like small town girls, they also need certain form of capital. Like, do they have or access to, like, do they know, like, do they have access to opportunities and resources like ICTs? Do they know about all these digital technological sites like LinkedIn or Zing or something related to that before coming to explore higher educational opportunities or something? Like, how does social capital or social media is playing a role in their gaining an exposure? I would like to know a little bit more on that.
Thank you. So, yeah, the social capital or the media is helping them a lot to access new opportunities or the opportunities which their departments or the institution is not able to tell them. So, the one of the best platform, I guess, is the LinkedIn only. And most of the respondents from my data, whom I have asked the similar kind of a question, most of them were on the LinkedIn because they that get that help them to get the opportunities in terms of the work or attending other conferences or the scholarships as well. Like, as the respondents were uh, also told that some of the scholarships which the institutions didn't tell them or they were not aware of, they get to know through these platforms or through the connection they have made on जिनको वो मतलब they were not known. Some of them are not aware of it because I don't think so कि people, female students are will be able to go through all whole process of ICC. So I think they are not much aware about it.
Thank you so much for answering my question, because I always feel that access to academic knowledge production, especially when it comes to female student migrants, are very much restricted. And especially depending on from where they are coming, because in my data set I have seen that there is very stark difference. That's why I thought of asking you that how people who are moving to Delhi are exploring, and also in Aligarh Muslim University, how they are exploring in terms of these how social capital basically is really shaping their aspiration to move. All right. Do we have any further questions? If not, I would again like to remind you all to kindly please fill in the form in order to receive the certificate of participation, in order for attending this insightful and very interactive talk where we brought relatability and actual great insights, and gotten really opportunity to learn from the practical insights what's happening inside a college premise even, and how it is also affecting the female student migrants things. And as you rightfully mentioned, it's not just data and it's not just statistics, it's lived reality. So thank you for bringing this up really to shed light upon that. And yeah, if we have no further questions, I would still also like to remind you all, just like Nalini, if you want to share your research and get suggestions, or just to present your research in front of an interactive audience like us, please feel free to submit an expression of interest in our speaker form, and we would be very happy to host you, just like our esteemed guest speaker today, and get to know about your insightful research as well. And thank you, everyone. Okay, you wrote it. Thank you, everyone, for your suggestions and questions. Yes, it's very thought-provoking, and to learn from you, there are a lot of things that I also learned from other interactions happening from different things. I think really liked about some questions, some real institutional rethinking spaces we also need that is also coming up, that what are the existing gaps in the institutional premises, how we can navigate those things. So it's really, really interesting, and we can together make a difference in this world, because we are all brainstorming and creating some active engagement towards a social commitment. And yeah, so without any further delay, if nobody has to say anything else, or if anything is missing, then I would like to conclude the session. And it was really nice to learn from you, Nalini, once again. And very happy. Please feel free to share any other research with us if you are doing something else as well. We would be very happy to invite you for a talk. Yeah. All
Thank
right.
you so much to you and the teams Socioscopia for giving me this opportunity. I'm
Yes.
really grateful.
Last but not the least, I would also like to thank, just like usual, closing meeting. Thanks to all the interns and also to Jagoshani for all the assistance of creating this meeting, for creating this discussion as success. Because without that, it is not a possibility to conduct any session. And yeah, it's very, very interactive, and I really love the session. So thank you so much. All right, have a good evening or a late night to all the friends, and depending on where you are based right now. And thanks to all the audience members from Jagoshani's and definitely interns here.
So I would like to thank Gurni for hosting this session so beautifully.
Thank you.
And
Thank
asking such
you.
thoughtful questions. So you forgot to thank yourself. So thank you.
Okay, thanks to me and thanks to you. But yeah, Unnati, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And it was lovely question from all of you. I think I really enjoyed the entire session. So, lot of good questions. And yeah, okay, then I would like to conclude and have a good rest of the evening and enjoy your weekend. Take care.